It is 7 p.m. I would like to call this meeting to order. And would you all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? May I have roll call, please?
Mrs. Greenberg, here. Mrs. Bacon, here. Mr. Laney,
Here.
Mrs. Matura,
Here.
Mrs. Case, here.
Next on the agenda is approval of agenda. Dr. Bales.
Thank you, President Matura. Items approved by consent will not come up for discussion during the meeting, but will be approved when the agenda is adopted. This is possible since members of the governing board receive the agenda along with backup materials at least 24 hours prior to the meeting and have time to review and consider all items. Prior to the agenda being adopted, members of the governing board or audience may ask that an item be removed from the consent agenda and brought to the floor for discussion at the appropriate place on the agenda. I would like to offer the agenda as posted.
Does any member of the governing board wish to have an item removed from the consent agenda? Does any member of the audience wish to have an item removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none, Mrs. Case, may I have a motion to approve the meeting agenda and recommended consent agenda items G1 to G15?
So moved.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda is governing board statements. Mrs. Greenberg?
Sure, thank you. First of all, I think everybody's noticed we've expanded a little bit up here, and I'd like to welcome two of our incoming board members, Mr. Tony Pantera and Mrs. Sandra Christensen, and looking forward to serving with you officially in January. Also this week, we had both, excuse me, our second quarter student voice meetings and PV Pulse. And again, it's always great to hear from our students in terms of, we've set it up so we ask them specific questions, but getting their feedback on different pieces of their day, different parts to what's going on in schools, et cetera, and always come away with some very thought-provoking ideas in terms of things we can do. And PV Pulse, it was great to hear. We were at Copper Canyon yesterday, and great to hear from a few parents who were able to join us for that. So, well, I guess we will have an opportunity next week to say happy holidays, but if you're not here and you're not joining us in person, this would be our last meeting of the year. So if we don't see you before then, I hope everybody has a great winter break.
Mrs. Case?
Thank you. I just want to wish everyone also happy holidays, and however you celebrate it, Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever it is, I hope you have opportunity to spend fun time with your family and friends. When I was just listening to, I hope that was able to work coming into this room from listening to that. It took me back to my own elementary days, and that was such a fun song I remember singing in elementary school. These really do create memories for these children that last their lifetime, and it has lasted mine, and I'm pretty old. So I also totally and thoroughly enjoy going to PV, the student voice. Oh my goodness. These students are so articulate and so willing to share their ideas. It is so fun to listen to them. They come up with really amazing things that we need to know of how to help our district be better. And it was really fun to listen to them and then to listen to parents on Wednesday at PV Pulse. Please attend PV Pulse. The next one is at Quell Run? Where? Hidden Hills in February. Hidden Hills in February. Well, you just get to come ask us any question you want. It's really fun. And you can try to stump us, and that's okay. But we just want parents to come and have the opportunity to meet in a smaller group, and it's just really fun and informative. So thank you so much for being here.
Mrs. Bacon?
Yes, I just want to welcome Mr. Pantera and Mrs. Christensen to the team. Mrs. Baker, I believe, is not feeling well. So, oh, but she's listening in. So welcome to her as well. Again, Student Voice, it's great. This is my last regular board meeting, so I just want to thank my fellow board members that I've served with now and in the past for their support and guidance and wisdom over the years. So thank you.
Mr. Laney?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right, so I'm at home sick, so I wish I could be there because it's my last regular board meeting too. And I've really enjoyed serving. It's been stressful, but also super rewarding getting to visit the schools and see all the kids. And I would like to wish the board members elect all the success and hope they are able to do a great job and enjoy their time on the board. And I'd also like to say that Student Voice is extremely fun. The opportunity to visit with the kids and hear their suggestions. I really liked how they talked about detention instead of not instead of expulsion, but detention, more like the Breakfast Club days, for those of you who remember that movie, because they feel that just being released from school is more of a vacation, where if they were actually having to serve detention at the school, it's more of a punishment. And so it was really interesting to hear their viewpoint on that. And so I really enjoyed that. And thank you. And I look forward to seeing you all in the future too.
Thank you. This too is my last normal, traditional board meeting, I guess, before our special session if we in a week or so. So I do want to thank everyone for the opportunity I've had in the past 4 years. It's been an amazing opportunity to serve the district. I've enjoyed so much getting to know everyone, district and the teachers and the parents and the kids. And it's been a really great 4 years, and I intend to remain involved in the district and continue to serve and help wherever I can. In the last couple of weeks since our last meeting, I did have an opportunity to get out to a few events, which is the best, to be able to go see and celebrate the kids. Again, the Student Voice is always fantastic. It's really great to be able to sit and chat with the kids and hear what the students are thinking. And additionally, I was able to go see Newsies at North Canyon, which was excellent. I'd never seen the movie or anything, so it was all brand new to me. And it was really exciting to see the kids up there. And they even had staff members and teachers who were part of the play, which is so fun to see them with the kids up there. I also had an opportunity to go see the initiation and installation ceremony for the Jobs for Arizona graduates at Shadow Mountain High School. And I am so impressed and excited about that program. I am so excited to watch it grow, see what happens. But seeing those kids in positions of leadership and what they were able to do under their leader's direction, and what they were able to come up with, it's just fantastic. It's such a awesome program. I'm so excited. I hope that everyone gets to hear more about it over the years and learns about this great program that we have, and I'm excited to see where these kids go. So thank you very much. And next on the agenda is awards and recognitions. Dr. Bales.
Thank you, President Ventura. At this time, I'd like to invite the governing board members and governing board elect members to join me down in front of the dais.
Good evening, President Matura, governing board members, Dr. Bales, members of cabinet, and attendees both in person and virtual. Tonight, we have several recognitions to share with you. This evening, we'll be inviting our honorees to the front of the room for their recognition and photo. So when I call your name, please make your way to the front of the room. Our first recognition is, our first recognition this evening is the Horizon Huskies girls volleyball team. They recently won the 2022 5A state championship. This is also a fantastic time to recognize their coach, Coach Valerie McKenzie, who's unable to be in attendance this evening. She's dedicated 43 years of service to student success in PV schools, leading Horizon to back-to-back championships. Coach McKenzie has been part of 5 state titles throughout her career. While she isn't able to join us this evening, please join me in applause for her dedication. Please continue that applause for 2022 5A State Championship volleyball team, starting with Ava Lambert. Eva Issett. Sarah Wadsworth. Ryder Blackburn. Abby Dudley. Skylar Garton. Lauren McCarthy. Bridget Moen. Avery Ashcroft. Grace Greenlee. Sierra Ann Jacob. Kendall Murphy. Tariah Sigler. And Emily Hogg. Because our next recipient wasn't able to attend this evening, the Under Armour All-American recognition will be moved to the January 12th meeting. Next on the list of recipients this evening is the 2022 Arizona Thespians Teacher of the Year Award for the North Region. In PV schools, there are many journeys of excellence, and while we've highlighted tonight a few athletic-related achievements, allow me now to highlight achievements related to fine arts. Please join me in congratulating the recipient of the 2022 Arizona Thespians Teacher of the Year Award for the North Region, Joe Flowers. Mr. Flowers is a teacher at Shadow Mountain High School. Next is the Paradise Valley Education Support Professional of the Month. PVSEA President Ms. Michelle Courtwright will be here to make the presentation.
President Matura, Governing Board, Dr. Bales, and Cabinet. This is one of the high point of the things I get to do as president. This month, we honor Vicki Chapman. She is a student information specialist in IT. And I received letters from middle schools, high schools, and elementary schools because she has a very large reach in our district. And it seems that it doesn't matter how silly your question is, she will answer it, and she doesn't make you feel bad, even if you've called 12 times that day. But one of the biggest things that she has done is our district recently went from a pilot electronic registration to a full-fledged program. So this year, we are completely online. She has taken the time to go over and beyond with this. She helped make sure that every household that was already in our system was linked so that our schools secretaries and registrars did not have to do that when school started this year. And that was a huge undertaking. I won't tell you how many hours she worked to do that. She also has made sure that she did smart cards. She made it easy for our parents. She made it easy for our registrars. And this has streamlined our process. This has reduced our data errors. It makes it uniform across all campuses. So this is something that even when she's gone, this will make our district more efficient and the information that we need for the state much easier to get. So it is with great pleasure that we recognize Vicki Chapman this year, or this month.
Thank you.
Our next recognition is the recipient of the Paradise Valley Education Association's Recognition of Professional Standards Award for Teachers. The honoree will be introduced this evening by Ms. Susie Seep, PVEA President.
Thank you, President Matura, Governing Board, Dr. Bales, and Cabinet. Please join me in celebrating the wonderful Kristen Baker. She's an English teacher at Horizon High School. She's a product of the district. She attended Village Vista, Sunrise, and she graduated from PV High. This is her 22nd year of teaching. She student taught at Pinnacle with David Appleman as her supervising instructor and began her teaching career in a different district. She continued her teaching career when she changed districts and began working at Horizon in 2011. She's so proud to call HHS her home. Her endorsements are in English and science, SEI, if you want to count that. She's the school city champion. She's on the HHS Teacher Clarity team and has been a part of the PVUSD Challenge Literature Work team. She was nominated by a brand new teacher, Libby Kittredge, who says that Kristen has gone out of her way to make me feel welcome. Her professionalism is obvious from all the hard work she does with School City. She offered a training every day of the week after school to help every new staff member on board. She's clearly going above and beyond to make it convenient for the newbies, even though that impacts her own schedule. She's touched, Libby is, by all the decor she gifted to help the classroom feel less bare since Libby had to leave so much behind. Everybody says that she extends help and advice to all the new staff, and that sort of extra effort should never go unrecognized. Kristen also forgives me for never showing up at my book club and is a real friend of mine. I can honestly say that being in her classroom at Horizon made me melancholy, and I hope she's keeping my seat warm. Kristen Baker, I'm so proud.
And President Matura, that concludes my portion of recognitions and awards this evening, but I would like to turn over a few more recognitions to Dr. Bales.
Testing. Thank you very much, Mr. Drogi. Audience, guests, and cabinet, governing board members, it's my distinct pleasure to take the opportunity to pass along some thanks to those board members who are leaving us after having served here on the governing board. The greatest, longest, for free position that they do. They commit many, many hours to serve. And I'd like to begin with a Distinguished Service Award to Mr. Laney. I know that you're online, Mr. Laney, and thank you. You came in through appointment this last year. And while you've only served for 1 year, I've been continuously impressed by the questions that you ask, the thoughtfulness that you give to decisions, and the commitment to the values, your personal, professional, and life values that guide you in your decisions. So, Mr. Laney, thank you so much for what you do. Mrs. Matura, come on over here. President Matura, I just want to say thank you. You're completing 4 years of service, and we are so blessed to have had you as a part of the PV team, the leadership team, and with this award as a Distinguished Superintendent's Award, I want to say thank you on behalf of the district for your 4 years of service. I am continuously impressed by the questions that you ask. You are one of those students that ask lots of questions. And I think it's really helped you gain a better understanding of the district, and it's thoughtful. Many don't know that because you see her sometimes very quiet up on the dais, but she's very, very thoughtful about the information that she gathers and considers when making a decision. So on behalf of the district, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Mrs. Bacon, come on up here. You don't like this at all right? I know you don't.
This is the worst picture ever taken of me, I just want to say.
It's my pleasure to present to you this Distinguished Service Award for 12 years of service. This has been a unique 12 years.
That's
Right? You have served as board president twice over that time. I think somebody's going to ask you, how did you get away with only 2 times? Right? But you know, it's there you go. Pass that along to the governing board elect members, right? Be careful what you wish for. But we are so blessed. You know, one of the things that's special about you is your commitment, right? As a social worker by background, your commitment to all kids. It's been very, very evident. And the other piece that I think is really important for you to know about her work as a board member, which is life work. This advocacy for children is a lifelong work in progress. And I know it's not going to stop when you leave the governing board. But you are a champion of the equity efforts in the district. And what I mean by that is the effort to differentiate our resources to kids in need so that we use what we have and do the best to meet all kids. We are so blessed, and thank you so much.
Next on the agenda is call to the public.
Call to the Public is about to convene.
This portion of today's meeting allows the public the opportunity to address the governing board. Although state law does not require that the governing board hold a call to the public, the Paradise Valley Unified School District and its board have chosen to do so because we believe it's important to hear about concerns and issues from our community. While call to the public is not designed to be a discussion, the board is here to listen. Due to Arizona open meeting law, the governing board cannot respond to, discuss, or take any action on items brought up during this time. However, staff members may be directed to get back to you and address individual concerns. As a reminder, the point of this and every board meeting is to accomplish the business at hand, and to be able to do so in an open and collaborative way. All in attendance are expected to observe meeting rules, as well as rules of politeness and decorum, so that we may serve as an example to our students that issues can be discussed in a respectful and civil manner.
Tonight, we have 3 people who have submitted comment cards prior to the start of the meeting. Each speaker will have 3 minutes for remarks. The 9 who have asked to speak on agenda items will be recognized at the appropriate time during the meeting. Please state your first and last name when you come to the podium. Our first speaker will be Marisha Garrity, and our second speaker will be Wendy Mahler.
Well, good evening, everyone. President Matura, Dr. Bales, board members, and cabinet. I am here today to welcome the new board members that are coming on board and also to thank those that have served. If you don't know me, my name is Marisha Garrity, and I am a volunteer coordinator for VIP. I really want to especially focus on Julie Bacon. Mrs. Bacon is amazing. We'd like to thank her because she's had a positive impact and her contributions are so many in our district. And she's impacted both teachers, students, the entire community. Co-founding VIP in 2012 is just one of many of her innovative contributions that she has initiated. But I think the one that is the most impactful, because VIP's goal is to help struggling students be more successful by matching teachers with trained and dedicated volunteer tutors who provide one-on-one and small group instruction. Julie, it's hard to believe, but as you well know, we are celebrating the 10th anniversary of VIP. What a victory. We just thought maybe that would last for a little while, but no, it's still here to stay, and the program is thriving. We have responded to about 130 teachers this year. We're in 28 schools versus the 2 that we started with in 2012. And we're serving about 1,000 students. So how wonderful is that from a community member who wanted to get involved and find a way to support students and teachers? On a personal note, it didn't stop after she decided she had an idea. And I would like to personally thank you for continuing to support the growth of the program over these past 10 years. And by volunteering your time for VIP, not just the board, and who God knows how many other things, but for VIP, you didn't leave us behind in the dust, and you're actively involved in advising us all the way along the way. And we really value your expertise. So I just like to leave you with a thought. You know, the board takes up a lot of time, and so now you've got a lot of free time. So we would like to thank the ultimate VIP for everything.
Mrs. Bacon, I think we should give you the opportunity to maybe introduce your family that's here too, supporting you, because this doesn't happen without family support. They know that you've given up a lot of time over the years for many, many projects. Would you please introduce your family?
Yes, if I can get through it. My husband, Gary, we've been married 34 years. When we were married, let's see. I married Gary when I was 23 years old. And I think to myself, why did my parents allow that to happen? but it was a good choice. So thank you for all your support because you literally cannot do this without family. My daughter Alex is in the back. Many of you know she is a teacher in the district, and she also asked me what I would be doing with all my free time. So I've got lots of offers. My son Michael lives in Oceanside, California, and I'm sure he's thinking about me. I don't, probably not, but that's okay. He's watching. Oh, hi. So thank you to my family, and of course, all of this is because of my parents who were both teachers and raised me to be concerned about education. So.
Next for call to the public is Wendy Mahler, followed by David Hickson.
Good evening, board members, and Ms. Bacon, all the best in your future endeavors. Ms. Matura, the same, all the best in your future endeavors, and welcome to Mr. Pantera and Ms. Christensen. So board members, superintendent, and cabinet, and board-elect, I would like to express my approval of addressing the 14 million budget shortfall and the recommendation to forego the SEL counselors. I believe it is more important to keep class sizes small than to keep these positions. Additionally, the taxpayers just approved the M&O budget override on promises of keeping class sizes down and providing competitive teacher salaries. In both September's board meetings, there were teachers and parents who spoke about their displeasure of larger classroom sizes after some classrooms were collapsed to address the declining enrollment and teacher shortages. The research arm of the United States Department of Education concluded that class size reduction is only one of 4 evidence-based reforms that have been proven to increase student achievement. The STAR study, Student-Teacher Achievement Ratio, demonstrated that students who are assigned to smaller classes in the early grades do better in every way that can be measured. They score higher on tests, receive better grades, and exhibit improved attendance. In addition, smaller classes enhance the development of non-cognitive skills not captured by tests like persistence, motivation, and self-esteem, which are also linked to success in school and school life. National surveys of educators believe that class size reduction is the most effective method to improve the quality of teaching. 76% of teachers said that reducing class size would be a very effective way of improving teacher quality. Another study commissioned by the United States Department of Education determined that the only objective factor that correlated with higher test scores was class size. The teachers and students are the stakeholders affected the most by the decision that will be made to who will be cut, as unfortunate as it is. I feel that it is better to keep the focus on the classroom. However, if a child is in need of emotional support, I'm sure every single teacher and staff member and parents will no doubt be able to pull together and support students in need of help. The district can be creative with the services of the remaining 13 SEL counselors that will stay on staff. Lastly, I would like to recommend not giving administrators a 6% raise when teachers will only receive a 2 to 3% raise. Due to this budget defect, I would recommend that administration only receive a 2 to 3%.
David Hickson.
Good evening. Just wanted to first say thanks for your service. I know this is a very difficult job, and for those of you coming in, you're coming into a difficult job, and just wanted to say that we appreciate that that you take on such a difficult task as a board member. I wanted to make a comment about the awakening, I think, that is occurring all across this country. I am among the awakened. I've seen what's happened since COVID, since the disgraceful and disgusting sexualization that's been found in some of our students' materials, this grooming, as it's called. We're paying close attention. And this isn't the only grooming going on. This grooming to raise our children to hate our country and to think that we're racist. This has got to stop, and just know we're watching, and we will be here, and we are putting our faith in you to do the right thing by our children. I also want to add that I saw an interview with the genocidal evil Dr. Fauci just this past weekend, and I was a little concerned about some of the comments made, especially by the softball questions being posed by the media about a potential new outbreak. I'm going to warn you, you've already seen student population decline as a result of COVID. If you do this again, if you come out with these ridiculous mask mandates and shutdowns, it's going to have devastating effects on this school district. Trust me on that. And also, we have a pretty significant budget matter to discuss tonight, a $14 million budget issue, which is quite remarkable how we're even in this position. But when it comes to budgets, I want you to also know that we all will be paying attention. We know those of you who've been elected with campaign contributions that come from sources that originate from those who win bids for projects in this district. This we will not tolerate. We are watching. We are not going to allow you to continue to give out bids or award bids to those who are also quietly lining the coffers for your campaigns when you come up for re-election.
Next on the agenda is Dr. Bales.
Thank you, President Ventura, governing board members, cabinet, and guests. Tonight in our mission moment, PV Schools will engage, inspire, and nurture students through high-quality instruction, meaningful educational opportunities, and dynamic learning experiences. And many of those experiences will be highlighted in new school overview videos that will be featured on our website. Several have already been posted, district newsletters, social media throughout the year, all great information. So I hope that you watch and seek that information. You will also find more videos about the experiences that lead to students' excellence by visiting the PV Schools YouTube channel. We certainly look forward to seeing the highlights of all of our schools over the coming months. So thank you much to our Marcom team and our school staff that are working together to make those happen. Next, congratulations to our marching bands who finished in the top 10 of their respective divisions at the Arizona Marching Band Association State Championships. Horizon High School took 4th place in Division 2A. Congratulations, Horizon. Congratulations to North Canyon High School, who took 2nd place in their Division 1A. Congratulations to Pinnacle High School, placing 4th in their 1A Teal Division. Congratulations to Paradise Valley High School, who took 9th place in Division 2A. And Shadow Mountain High School, who took 2nd place, also in Division 1A Teal. Thank you. This past Tuesday, just a couple of days ago, this week, the nation celebrated Giving Tuesday. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our supportive community, whether making individual donations, donating through tax credits, or supporting your school through the donation of time. On behalf of our district, thank you very much. For more information on the many opportunities to support student success here in Paradise, please visit pbschools.net, and search for Support Our Schools or volunteer. Since our last meeting, there has been an update to some of our school letter grades. Following the appeal process, I'm happy to report that Explorer Middle School has gone from a B to an A. North Canyon High School has gone from a C to a B. And Shadow Mountain High School is now an A, also increasing from a B. This makes all 5 comprehensive high schools either an A or a B, and 88% of our schools in all as either A or B, and we are so proud. For more information about the letter grades, go to our website's newsroom. I know it's hard to believe, but Kindergarten Roundup begins. It's now open for the 23-24 school year. So if you have friends or neighbors that are looking for a journey of excellence here in PV, they begin here at one of our 29 elementary schools. And from language immersion to international baccalaureate to core knowledge and the arts, PV Schools has many opportunities for you to find the right program for your child. Tours are available by contacting the main office of your school of choice. And you can find those tour days, dates, and times on every school page of our website. Of course, it's that time of the year again to get excited for the annual Sights and Sounds of the season. Returning for the 22 holiday season, Paradise Valley K-8 students are putting on a choral performance for all to enjoy. Join us this Saturday, December 3rd at Desert Ridge Marketplace from 9:20 a.m. to 3:40 p.m. to see these talented students in action. We hope to see you there and find out for more information for your school at day and time on Saturday. You may find those at the pbschools.net newsroom. And last but not least, my personal welcome to our governing board elect members, Mr. Pantera, Mrs. Christensen, and Mrs. Baker, who is, I know, watching online. We look forward to you joining us officially in the board seats come January. And I look forward to working with you. It's been we've had good transition meetings already, and I look forward to your service and leadership. So thank you.
Next on the agenda is under items for approval, Dr. Bales.
Thank you, President Mature, governing board members, cabinet guests, and tonight we will present for second reading the proposed new courses and revisions for the 23-24 high school's course catalog. This is second reading. There are no changes from the first reading 2 weeks ago. And Dr. Corson and his team are here and available to answer any questions, and we do recommend approval.
May I please have a motion to approve the proposed new courses and revisions for the 2023-2024 high school course catalog as presented?
So moved.
Any member of the board wishing to make a comment or question? Mrs. Case.
I just want to congratulate the committee and Dr. Corson for these fine additions to the course catalog. I'm so excited. These are fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Case.
Okay. All those in favor, please vote. Please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda is consideration and approval of additional revisions to the Family Student Handbook for 2022-2023.
Thank you, President Mature, governing board members, cabinet, and guests. Tonight, Mr. Long will present for approval the revisions to the Family Student Handbook. Mr. Long.
Good evening, President Mature, governing board members, and Dr. Bales. For your approval this evening, I present revisions to the 22-23 Family Student Handbook due to governing board policy changes that were based on recent legislative additions and updates in the areas of hazing, interscholastic and intramural sports, and school visitors. Dr. Asmussen reconvened the Family Student Handbook Committee to update and review these changes. At this time, we recommend approval and will be happy to answer any questions.
May I please have a motion to approve the additional revisions to the Family Student Handbook for 2022-23 as presented?
So moved.
Any questions or comments? Mrs. Case?
I'm just curious. We don't hand this out in a printed form anyway, but students and parents are still held responsible for what's in this. Is that correct?
Yes, they are. It's posted on our website.
It's posted on the website, and they're just held accountable to the directions and the information in this. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Case, they also sign off on the emergency forms at the beginning of the year indicating that they have received and or read those materials.
I just want to let everyone know that they're held accountable whether they read it or not, and they've signed the agreement. Thank you.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda is consideration and approval to award request for proposal RFP 23-010 for flight simulator. Dr. Bales.
Thank you, President Matura, governing board members, cabinet, and guests. Tonight, Mr. Long will also present for approval this very unique piece of equipment, enhancing the Space Force program at Shadow Mountain High School. Mr. Long.
Good evening, President Matura, governing board members, and Dr. Bells. I request your approval this evening to consider the purchase of a flight simulator for the Air Force JROTC Flight Academy at Shadow Mountain High School. The Air Force JROTC Flight Academy was instituted to address the significant national pilot shortage and rated diversity. Since 2018, Air Force JROTC has funded 569 scholarships with a graduation rate of 78%. Shadow Mountain High has been awarded 10 of these scholarships. Last year alone, Shadow Mountain was awarded 5 scholarships, up from an average of 2 per year. To compete for the scholarship, cadets must be enrolled in Air Force or Space Force JROTC and have a minimum of a 3.0 GPA. At Shadow Mountain, all students in the program are enrolled in the Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University ERAU 101 Aviation course, a free online course. Through the RFP process, it is the recommendation of Rebecca McGowan, Director of Career and Technical Education, and the Purchasing Department that RFP 23-010 for a flight simulator contract be awarded to Redbird Flight Simulations, Inc., the firm determined to have submitted the most advantageous offer. The funds for this purchase are provided by the WestMec Industry Aligned Equipment Grant. This grant can only be used to purchase equipment that aligns with PV's career and technical programs. We recommend approval. If you have any questions, I have Colonel Bones, who is our Space Force ROTC instructor, present with us this evening. I believe he has a few cadets with him as well.
Good right there. We have questions, governing board members. Motion.
May I please have a motion to approve the award request for proposal RFP 23-010 for flight simulator as presented?
So moved.
Okay, any questions or comments from the board?
I have one.
Okay.
So as somebody in high school who wanted to be a pilot but couldn't because their vision wouldn't allow them at that time and age, I am appreciative that we could get something like this. And so I'm really excited for the district on this. My question has to do with funding, and I think you already addressed it, that it's not coming from M&O or anything like that. It is coming from this other funding source, correct?
That is correct.
Awesome. Thank you.
Comments or questions? Mrs.
I
Case?
think it's really exciting that we have this opportunity to have this for our students. That is so unique, and I'm grateful for this opportunity for our students.
I also had a question and a comment too. So I appreciate Mr. Laney, because that was my same clarification, is that this money needs to be used in the CTE programs for things like this to provide opportunities for our students. And that this money could not have been moved over to help solve the issue that we're going to be talking later in today, that this is a separate funding source.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much. I also believe that in recent years, we've had students graduate with their pilot's license. Is that through your program? Is that correct? Okay. Thank you.
Colonel Bones, would you like to share with us maybe your enthusiasm for this purchase and how it's going to help engage students? I know you're just dying to get that
He
mic.
thought you'd never ask.
We try to emulate, there's a school in South Carolina that gets about 20 scholarships a year. We're hoping this year we'll at least get 10. We had 12 applicants this year, up from 7 last year. The 2 cadets here, John Justice was awarded a Air Force ROTC scholarship worth up to $300,000. He was just awarded this. And Cadet Matty Campos is up for what we call the J1 Hunter Scholarship. That's the top scholarship. It's worth upwards to $400,000 to $500,000 a year. So she'll be interviewing here soon. Now, the school in South Carolina, the instructor, the mirror image of me there, has a pilot license, and I'm a pilot as well, but he has a plane. So in lieu of getting a plane, the full motion flight simulator suffices so the cadets can, but everybody's welcome to come. The cadets, they will actually be training the other cadets in the flight simulator. So as they come back, we are going to find out tomorrow who got the scholarships. That will be announced tomorrow, so that'll be good news. But yes, you're all welcome. We'll be out there. It's a full motion flight simulator. It should help our chances of getting more and more flight scholarships. They went up from 250 last year to 300 this year, and they're looking to get 500 in the future. So it's an awesome program.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 And any opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda is public hearing for fiscal year 2022-23 school district annual budget revision number 1, followed by consideration and approval of the fiscal year 2022-23 school district annual budget revision number 1. Dr. Bales.
Thank you, President Matura, governing board members, cabinet, and guests. This is one of those tasks that we do by statute every time this time of the year. And at this time, we will conduct the public hearing for the budget revision number 1, followed by the recommendation for approval for fiscal 23 budget revision number 1. Ms. Berrigan, would you please present?
Thank you, Dr. Bales, President Matura, and Governing Board. As Dr. Bales sort of alluded to, is a little bit more of a technicality right now than anything, particularly because we don't have our final ADM or average daily membership for the year, but we are required to provide a budget revision in December. And so I'll just take you all through that real quickly. We are going to talk about our main budget funds, which are maintenance and operation and district additional assistance, the average daily membership difference, and the budget impact. So you will see that between the adopted budget and December revision, there's a difference of about $9.5 million, or a decrease of about $9.5 million. We generally see a decrease during the December timeframe from the adopted budget because we adopt the budget a little bit higher than what we actually expect so that we can ensure that we take in all the capacity for the M&O override. We don't want to lose any of that capacity. Additionally, if you remember when we had to adopt this budget, we didn't have a whole lot of information quite yet because the budget wasn't actually passed until June 30th, and our budget proposal and adoption were done before the state had their budget ready to go. We did have some indication of what that budget would look like, but there are some differences in the base support amount and a couple of other things that I'll take you through on the next slide. Then with unrestricted capital, there's a similar decrease there due to some of those changes as well. So with the average daily membership, that says a decrease of approximately 700 and something behind there. I think it's 750. 760. I was very close. Average daily membership's a little bit different than enrollment. And again, this is not our final average daily membership. Even at the time of this budget revision, we don't have a 40th day ADM report from Arizona Department of Education yet. So we know that this isn't fully accurate at this point in time. We will do another budget revision by May 15th, as you recall, and that will have more accurate information in it at that point in time. As mentioned, we adopt the budget with a slightly higher ADM to ensure that we don't lose out on any potential M&O capacity should we end up in a growth situation. Additionally, when we adopted the budget, the estimate for the base level amount was at $4,858.69 per ADM. And the actual base support amount that was adopted by the state was $4,775.27 per ADM.
Our teacher experience index between the adoption and this December revision went down by 0.3 I think that's right, from 1.0083 to 1.008. And then additionally, we had to estimate what we thought they were going to add for one of our special education categories that include those areas listed there, DD, ED, and so forth. We estimated it at 0.3179, so a weight of 0.3179, meaning students who fall into that category, we get that $4,775 amount, and then an additional 0.3179 of that. But that was actually changed when the budget was adopted by the state to 0.292, so not quite as high as we thought. All of those things add up to the changes that we see in the M&O budget revision. As mentioned, it's really more of a technicality to ensure that we continue to discuss the budget and make sure that the board is aware, but we will take these changes into consideration for our budget moving forward as well. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
May I please have a motion to approve the fiscal year 2022-23 school district annual budget revision number 1 as presented?
So moved.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next on the, are there any comments or questions? Oh, I've skipped that. I apologize. Do we have any comments or questions after the fact?
No, I don't have any comments or questions, but I did try to vote aye, so I don't think it came through.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Next on the agenda is gifts and donations. May I please have a motion to accept gifts and donations as presented?
So moved.
I wanted to bring attention to a few of the gifts and donations that we have tonight. We appreciate all of the generous donations that we receive to our district. It benefits our students greatly across the entire district. And some to highlight this evening, North Canyon High School received from the Thunderbirds Foundation $1,000 for girls golf and $1,000 for boys golf. Additionally, we had a donation to Sky Crossing Elementary School of legacy benches from Sky Crossing Elementary PTO in the amount of $2,500. And Jostens donated $3,000 each to faculty appreciation and staff recognition funds at each of the following high schools: Shadow Mountain, Pinnacle, Horizon, North Canyon, and Paradise Valley High Schools. So we appreciate those donations. They will are greatly appreciated at each of the sites. If you're here, thank you so much. If you're watching at home, thank you for your support of our district. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda is items for discussion. Dr. Bales.
Thank you, President Matura, governing board members, cabinet, and guests. Tonight, we present an update to the work of the Budget Task Force. And I'd like to begin by thanking again the employees who participated in this difficult conversation, as well as parent representation that was added this past week. Earlier this afternoon, the governing board spent more than 3 hours taking a deeper dive into the options and presented presented as a result of the most recent work of the Budget Task Force. At this time, we will present the same presentation that was provided earlier today. I'd like to begin by sharing that the governing board received a lot of information. If you were paying attention to the governing board meeting from 2 weeks ago, they discussed the request for additional information. They've been provided some survey information from employees, from administrators, and from parents. All of that was provided for them to digest, read. So we gave them a pretty big piece of homework over the last few days for them to do so, and I want to thank them for doing that. They also received more detailed information about the class size impacts. They also received the original list of considerations, more than 70 different items that the Budget Task Force began looking at in early June. Also, they received information about instructional coaches and SEL assignments, what the FTE is, and what locations that may be impacted. So that information was provided to them, and they had an opportunity to review it. The next slide, do I have the remote? There we go. Thank you. So as you can see, we're going to build off of the presentation that was provided just a couple of weeks ago. And so we'll run through that fairly quickly here. The background and history was provided last time. It's on the website. There's a very detailed letter that was posted to the website yesterday. And so I'm not going to read all of this to you. We have shared that and digested that many times over. What I would move on to is that at the governing board's direction 2 weeks ago, we added parent representation to the group. And that group did reconvene as requested this past Monday. I'll remember that the purpose of this group was to develop a recommendation to Cabinet to resolve the ongoing budget shortfall and to provide employees with additional compensation this year. What was originally presented 2 weeks ago from the Budget Task Force to Cabinet was this list. Here we go. This list of summary items, some one-time issues, some ongoing state equalization money and such. And so after the recommendations, there was this amount here, correct, Mrs. Berrigan? In the end, the recommendation still had about $950,000 to go. And this isn't difficult for us because we said at the beginning of the process that we could do this over a couple of years. And so we fully expect that we'll have those ongoing conversations. The work of this budget task force is just the beginning. These were the final recommendations for 23-24 from that group that finished their work on September 30th. This is just review. There were these recommendations to reduce employees' work schedule by 1 day furlough, cutting some custodial hours, some non-personnel cuts, department M&O budgets, increase average general education class size by 1, remove the elementary accounting clerk positions, reduce college and career specialists to the same length of teacher contracts, and eliminate Hanover, which is a research firm that has helped us do a parent satisfaction survey and things like that. The recommendation 2 weeks ago also included the following compensation amounts. This Paradise Valley Education Support Professionals would receive 6% to the group, with a minimum of 3% to each employees. That group of employees recommended distribution of the dollars as summarized on this screen. 6% to that group. The Teachers Association, Paradise Valley Education Association, would receive 3% to the group, 2% on the base, some dollars to the priority service credit, and they had input in recommending how that money is distributed with the 3% to the group. The executive support staff is 6 people. These are executive assistants. These are the executive assistants that serve in executive assistant roles to assistant superintendent, and the governing board. These 6 individuals have been traditionally treated like support professionals. So they also then would be receiving 6% as 6 individuals. Because of their executive level functioning, they're not part of the bargaining group for the PVSEA. They're their own group because of their set of skills and responsibilities. And then the final group was to recommend a 2% increase to the base salary for administrators. And at this time, I'd like to just ask a couple of questions that have been asked of me so I can provide some answers and some context. I'm going to go back because I did skip a slide here, may I? Yeah. There's a couple of factors that we consider in how we get to the end of the budget. And these factors are important for us to consider in determining our end of year budget balance carry forward. And we've had some direction and information about that budget balance carry forward. And Ms. Berrigan, we typically carry what % in our budget balance carry forward, or what's our goal in moving forward so we can have cash reserves in case of emergencies?
With the maintenance and operation budget, we've carried anywhere up to 15% before. Right now, because we used some of our budget balance carry forward funds to support balancing the budget for fiscal year 2022, our goal for this year, based off of direction, was to keep that in the 7 to 8% range, and we're just a little bit over 7%, and we'll continue to do that moving forward based off of direction. We do have some other funds that are operations related too, and we are keeping that right at about 11% also as directed.
For example, the other funds might be the
Indirect cost.
indirect costs and Medicare reimbursement.
Medicare, correct.
Okay, thank you. Also, another funding source that we receive is District Additional Assistance, DAA, to the tune of about $6.5 million a year. Is that right?
Oh, no,
Oh, I'm sorry.
a little bit more than that, probably around 12 million. The 6.5 million is the district additional assistance override
Gotcha.
that we received by voter approval, 6,410,000.
But the DAA from the state is an amount
Yes,
that we receive to the tune of about.
about $12 million. And yeah,
And so historically, over the last 30 years, right, we've used a percentage of that to support salaries and benefits, correct?
correct.
And so at board direction, we have used 85% of that amount towards salary and benefits.
Yes.
Have there been times in the last 30 years that we've had more than that?
Yes,
Yeah, so we've had as much as 100%, and we've also had less than 85% over
Correct.
the last number of years. So the salaries that I was speaking of, as directed, we recommended, supported that compensation be a part of the resolution to the budget shortfall. And because we did receive, a significant amount of dollars in the revenues from the state budget adopted on June 30th after we had identified the budget shortfall. I think that it's important to know some of the history. This is only the second time in the last 10 years that we have differentiated the amount between groups. As in, administrators 2%, the teacher group 3%, the support staff. This is only the second time in the 10 years. I think it's actually in the 24 years that I've been in the district. It may have only been the second time that they've been differentiated like this. It does have a morale impact and such, but I did want to answer some questions that have been asked of me, because sometimes the question is, are we administrative heavy? Do we have too much administration? And we have different ways to look at it, but we have 104 administrators, people who have a title and their responsibility is to supervise or evaluate. They have a title of supervisor, coordinator, assistant director, director, assistant superintendent, superintendent, principal, or assistant principal. Those are the people that make up the 104. That represents out of our 3,700 employees, about 3%. Now, the state uses a different definition for administration. That is a larger, and I'd like you to share with me, Ms. Berrigan, the definition that the state uses for administration, because it includes people from every group. There are teachers, support staff, and administrators that make up this larger definition of administration.
Yes, administration also includes other central services functions, so that would include folks in our human resources department and our finance department and payroll. It includes our school secretaries and clerks and things of that nature too. So there is a larger definition that encompasses administrative costs. Our central services have been about 2.5% of our total spending in prior years. General administration is usually a little under 1%. And then school administration is at about 4.5%.
I've always shared a personal goal to increase as much money to the classroom and reduce non-instructional costs. The state average is about $1,000 per pupil for administration, and we spend approximately how much?
For 2021, which is the last time we had all of the school districts to compare to, we spent $864 per pupil.
So about $140 some less than the state average.
Mhm.
How do we compare in terms of our administrative costs to peer-like districts, same size, pre-K through 12 and such?
Yeah, there's generally 7 districts, including ourselves, that we compare to with the most current year again, which was fiscal year 21 that we have to compare with them. We were the 3rd lowest in admin spending, and some districts, we were at 8.9%. The highest district was at 14.8%.
Thank you. Now, one of the pieces of this compensation package that we've advocated for, received direction on, is to support the differentiated amount. And we've had the belief that everybody should get a little something. And I know that's hard to understand and appreciate because there are different salaries for the different responsibilities in the district. I do believe that we should continue to honor the compensation package that was recommended 2 weeks ago, including the 2% to the base for administrators. However, I am willing and will donate all of the 2% that's in my contract that would be awarded to me to the Paradise Valley Education Foundation if this was approved by the governing board. It's as a reminder, we also have already paid out and honored our commitments for the 1% base increase to our employees this year, a $1,000 one-time retention incentive, and the 3.34 one-time retention incentive that was paid out on November 9th. This revision would be, this was originally December, if we were to move forward with any recommendations, and there are no plans tonight for approval. This is just continues the conversation. We would still be able to pay out probably in 2 payments, January and May, any compensation to our employees if we had governing board action before the end of the semester. And that was certainly one of the things that I heard from the board last time, that they wanted to make a decision before winter break. Just as review, Cabinet added to the conversation 2 weeks ago, considering eliminating one of the recommendations from the budget task force and adding 2 others for consideration. The final cabinet recommendation looked like this, kind of just building off of what the budget task force presented. So you can see the strike through and the lines 8 and 9 were the additions. This is all presented from 2 weeks ago. Based on what we hear this afternoon, what we heard this afternoon and what we will hear tonight, we'll determine next steps. We potentially would schedule a special meeting next Thursday night with any recommendations for action pending governing board approval. With that timeline, we could honor the compensation commitments, providing HR, payroll, and finance the opportunity to do their technical work and still hopefully get that out to employees by the end of January as the first half of that compensation package. Another question that I'm often asked is, what did administration do this year to help resolve the issue? And this is what we implemented as a strategic hiring review. We took a very careful look at every position that developed as a result of a resignation or retirement. And we looked at positions as a group and we made some decisions about should we post those positions. This list of positions are things that we did not move forward in filling. It created more budget capacity for us to provide the compensation package that we just summarized. And you can see that some of these positions, all these positions are really far away from the classroom as possible. Many of them are not at the site, but I would point out that there are people from every group on this list. We moved an assistant principal from PV Connect to fill another TOA role, AKA assistant principal. And then we did not fill 3.5 administrative intern roles. Now those are administrative-like positions. We call them TOAs. Many times you know them as assistant principals at the elementary level. And we did not fill 3.5 of those this year at certain sites as a cost-saving measure. We also continue to have challenges in filling our bus driver vacancies. And so we determined that we did not need to have 4 trainers. We just don't have enough new applicants and new drivers. So we figured we could get by with one less trainer. And then you can see the other positions that we did. So that was some of the administrative things that we did this year in the current year budget to assist in the budget shortfall and building budget capacity for additional compensation. And as I've already said before, both last time and this time, this is just the beginning. We still have a lot of work to do, but we started the process early in June, openly and transparently, with the commitment to do this over more than 1 year. We used one-time dollars at the end of fiscal 22 that finished on June 30th. And we've used additional revenues in this year's budget, as well as some other one-time money to be able to solve the current year problem. And then we're building in commitments moving forward for fiscal 23-24. All right. At this time, I'd like to ask Dr. Holmes, Ms. Barrican, to share with us the budget task force work. They reconvened this past Monday, and there are some things that they shared with the governing board that they could agree on and some that they couldn't, but they wanted to make that all available for their review. Dr. Holmes?
Thank you. Yes, there were a number of things that the group did consider. First on the list was instructional coaches. There was some discussion about how we might reduce instructional coach positions as part of a revision, but we never came to any kind of form or conclusion about what that might look like, so there was no consensus on that. We also talked about reducing our departments here at the district. Originally, that had been something that we had discussed in our original meetings previously by 10. We talked about maybe 5. There was I will say some considerable concern, especially from PVSEA President Michelle Courtright, who has experience speaking with a lot of people in our departments and noting that the workload as it stands is a challenge, and further reductions would be difficult to manage. There was some discussion about additional furlough days for COA and cabinet. We also talked about at the elementary levels, there's a total of a 1.5 allocation for TOA, SEL, and IC. And we talked about the notion of, can we maybe reduce that by 0.5 and let sites to choose which 0.5 that might be. Trying to address some of the conversation at the last board meeting, we did not come to consensus on that. And then finally, not a budget item, but there was some discussion and concern that, we did present a compensation package, and we've advertised that to our employees, and there's a belief that we need some way, somehow we need to follow through and raise compensation as such for our employees.
The chart that we have here ended up being where we were finally able to come to some additional items on consensus from this Monday's meeting. Everything that's still in white there, so numbers 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, and 9 had no changes to them. Those were all on the previous list from the September 30th Budget Task Force meeting. There was the removal of the increase to average gen ed class size by 1, which was a little under $2 million. And in place of that are numbers 5 and 6 highlighted in blue there that the task force was able to come to consensus on. The first is to reduce the SEL positions at secondary, which would be 12 FTE and result in a savings of $816,000. And then the increase to average gen ed class size by 1 at elementary schools at 12 FTE, which would also be approximately $816,000. And so the general consensus was that the decrease to class size was less palatable for secondary, and the removal of the SEL positions was less palatable at the elementary schools. The total of these reductions is less than the original September 30th Budget Task Force recommendation, which was a little bit more than $4 million. This came to $3,688,000 and would begin our 23-24 with an additional almost $3 million negative balance among other budget issues that we'll have to contend with as well. So the ongoing deficit, as a reminder, was just under $5 million. The total from the prior slide of the $3.688 million brings the balance after the ongoing solutions to that negative $1.3 million, just under $1.3 million, moving into 23-24. Dr. Bales?
A couple other questions that I'd just like to ask so that people can hear the answers to is, what does, Ms. Berrigan, what does the percent of the reduction mean to each group in terms of if this recommendation from the budget task force was approved by the governing board, what's the percent of impact on the certified group, the support group, or such?
So for the certified group, we have a little over 2,200 FTEs. So the decrease of 24 FTEs would represent a little over 1%, 1.08% of that. For ESPs, our FTEs are about 1,466. So with the reduction of the 14 FTEs for those accounting clerk positions, that would be a little under 1%. It would be 0.95% of the FTEs.
Thank you. I want people to know that, as I've said, this is really just the beginning. You see, there's still work to do. And I am committed to reducing administrative costs in the similar fashion as any other board approved recommendations impact the other employee groups. So if we have a percent that impacts one particular group, I'm committed to making sure that that has the same percentage impact on the administrative group as well. And, times have changed. Things are very, very different than they were 30 years ago. They're not like they were when I taught. It's much harder. The principalship than when I was a principal is much harder. The compliance issues with the district is much harder. When I started 35 years ago and I look at the Arizona Revised Statutes, Title 15 now, it's doubled. It's doubled in size with the expectations that we have in compliance issues. And it's not easy. We have issues that we can resolve by working together. And while these are not easy discussions, I know that we can work through them together. And at this time, I'd like to turn it back to President Ventura for governing board members to comment, either ask some questions. I guess we're going to go to, there we go, blue cards first. But at some point, I know that our governing board members will share some insight on their discussion and comments from earlier today as well.
We have 9 comment cards. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. We're going to start with Henry Hill. Please state your first and last name as when you come to the podium. Henry Hill will be followed by Molly Edmonds and then Michelle Courtwright.
Good evening, Governing Board, President Matura, Dr. Bales, and the Cabinet. My name is Henry Hill. I have 3 students in the district. I'm going to go quickly through a few things. I've been jotting down some notes during the presentation. I appreciate the additional information and the additional time everyone is taking on this. I do agree that this is something that needs to be handled by the current board because it's not fair to pass on to the next board. Given some of the news we've heard recently about enrollment, about the enormous cut to our public funding, education funding from the ESA, estimating $300 million, and the school spending limit that still hasn't been resolved. The next board is going to have plenty to deal with, and they should not have the responsibility for this as well. I have just a couple points to make. One question to Dr. Bales. You showed a slide that showed a reduction from the positions that are being put on hold, and we heard about how we're resolving this budget year. I just want, if you can clarify at some point today in the discussion, is that adjusting just for this budget, the 23, 22, 23, or is that a continuing savings that'll happen and be able to be part of this 23, 24? And I'll let you answer at the end, that's fine. But if you can really look at that I was confused by that part. I do also want to make a point that I didn't bring up last week or the last time that we met. The SELs, as the district has shown, the SELs are an important part of the school security strategy. They are the ones who can help identify if there are issues happening with students that may grow to be something that can become much more detrimental to the students. So really pay attention to where you're making those cuts. It's the right thing because you're impacting the security strategy that's been set forth by this district. And the last thing I'd like to say is I think this board and some of the members here need to take some responsibility for some of the M&O messaging. You knew where we were with the budget, and by messaging that that the M&O was going to impact or not have an impact on the current class size or reducing it, you took a major bullet out of the chamber of what you could use to affect this. And I think that was irresponsible since you knew where we were with the budget back in June or even earlier. So while there are people in the community who are going to hold it against you if you have to go with increasing class size. I think you brought this on yourself by making a promise that you weren't potentially not going to be able to keep. So just keep that in mind. And I just like to make a general comment that, I've been in this state now for over 6 years. The way that budgeting funding happens here from a state standpoint is Byzantine and confusing. And I hope that our elected leaders in the future can come up with a way to simplify this, increase it, make it much more straightforward so we don't have to go through this again. Thank you.
We have Molly Edmonds and then Michelle Courtwright, followed by Erica Moriarty.
Hi, good evening. I'm Molly Edmonds. I'm a Sandpiper mom. I have 2 students, a first grader and a third grader. It's my first meeting. I'm not as articulate as the other parents, but I want to say my piece. So we moved to Arizona from Seattle in August 2020, height of the pandemic. My third grader was a kindergartner when the school was shut down. He got 5 months in kindergarten and all of first grade online. The third grade class is the first real COVID elementary kids. The third grade class at Sandpiper, they are spirited and wild. They're a tough class. I don't think that's a coincidence. These kids did not get the full kindergarten experience where they're learning these skills. They're learning how to deal with adults that aren't their parents. They're learning social skills, emotional skills. My kid didn't get that experience that the other kids have. I'm gonna get emotional because Miss Denise has been a shining star in our experience in not just Sandpiper, but Arizona. I am involved as much as I can. I'm there at drop off, I'm there at pickup. I see her in action daily. I see teachers calling out for her to come help so they can focus on their classrooms and not have to take the attention away for the other students. I see these kids look at Miss Denise and just her presence is calming. In the day and age where we see school shootings, we see cyberbullying, mental health is just as important as reading, writing, math. You have to teach these kids at a young age how to deal with these emotions, and hopefully we can prevent these kind of terrible tragedies we see unfolding. So, let me read my speech. I just want to thank you, Miss Denise. I'm here tonight for her. I'm here for all the SELs. I'm here for mental care. It is so important, and I think it's tragic and shameful that that is even on the table. Thank you.
President Matura, Governing Board, Dr. Bells, and Cabinet. My name is Michelle Courtwright, and I am the president of the Employee Support Association. I spoke to you a couple of weeks ago, and I wanted to take a moment to thank you for hearing us. You allowed us to go back to the table where our voices are the strongest. I listened to you today talk about how difficult this was a few years back when you guys had to do it. It was just as difficult for us. Every single thing on this list turns my stomach, but it had to be done. And excuse me, I also want to thank you because I appreciate the integrity I see from the board and from Dr. Bales. You guys understood that your word means something. So it bothers you to see something on this list that you said wouldn't happen. But I'm asking you to trust us. We have spoken to our people. We are not bringing these things lightly. And I'm asking you to think and to trust the people that are doing the job to do what is best for them to be able to serve students. I know this is difficult, and I know your word means something, but I'm asking you to really think and trust the people that were in that room, because collectively, we have great ideas and we know how to make them work. Thank you.
After Erica Moriarty will be Carrie Nangle, followed by Melissa Schwartz.
Hello. I just quickly wanted to say thank you, President Mature. We're gonna miss you. You've been a pleasure to watch and see, and I'm gonna personally miss you a lot. So, and thank you, Ms. Bacon. I appreciate all you've done. My name is Erica Moriarty. I'm the current PTO president for Sandpiper Elementary School. I'm also a member of the executive board for the United Parent Council. I spend countless hours of my time volunteering for this district because I'm also a product of the Arizona public school system. And I know firsthand how scarce resources can be for our very underfunded public schools. These many, many hours have shown me just how much is asked of our school staff, especially post-pandemic. I'm in the school a lot volunteering, and I get to see maybe more than the average parent how much the staff is asked and have to endure every day to make sure our students are not only educated, but feel safe and feel empowered and can learn those social skills after the pandemic. So you can imagine how much I was surprised when the district announced this, that one of their many recommendations was to cut the critical support services at the school level because of an accounting error made at the district level. And while maintaining and cutting very little from the staffing and services at the district level. It was not a district staff member that assisted a student that was stopping instruction because they needed help regulating their emotions, the third grader who has been on online school for the entire pandemic and didn't know how to be in a classroom. It was our social worker, Miss Denise, that did that. It wasn't a district employee that drastically reduced the district-wide suspensions as was presented today earlier in the study session. It was shown that it was SEL's implementation that did that made our schools safer. And it wasn't the district staff that trained my child's teacher how to work with his different brain, his gifted brain, and how to engage him in learning when he was bored. It was our instructional coach, Miss Coca, that did that. These positions are vitally important to the success of our children and for the ability of the teachers to teach. Teachers are taxed to their limits trying to make up for the learning deficits caused by the pandemic. The success of these efforts were made clear when the latest school grades were announced. The district, even tonight, was applauding themselves for the strong performance of the PV schools, but the data strongly supports that the implementation of the SEL program and the employment of instructional coaches had a direct impact on these rankings. I mean, I've heard Dr. Bales on numerous occasions, because like I said, I'm very involved, say how lucky we are to have so much choice in our district and in our state. That is why I've driven 25 minutes to Sandpiper. Please don't make me.
Good evening, Governing Board, Dr. Bales and Cabinet. I am Carrie Neagley. I am a social worker in the district. I listened today to most of the study session, and to say I walked away frustrated was an understatement. There seems to be a lot of confusion about the positions we have and how they are paid. I am not comforted knowing that confusion exists while decisions about these very positions are being made. To be clear, we currently have a social worker in every Title elementary school, in 3 middle schools, and in 2 high schools. We also have 6 elementary schools that were awarded the Safe School Grant positions and have either a social worker or counselor. Then we have the SEL positions, 0.5 elementary and 1 per middle and high school. And in addition to those SEL positions, there are additional SEL positions that sites funded with ESSER. Those specific positions are not the ones up for discussion because they knew that that money would eventually go away. Now I want to reiterate some of an original email that I sent to you when this process started. A few years ago, it became clear in the bargaining agreement that teachers needed help with behavior. They needed help with social emotional issues. They couldn't teach because of the daily disruptions caused by students in need, students with difficult homes, tragic stories, dark secrets, and trauma that had altered the way they live and function in the world. So the district decided that help could be provided by creating the social emotional learning specialist positions. If you remove SEL positions in their entirety across all levels, you leave 15 elementary schools with zero support. You will have 4 middle schools with only minimal support in the form of their counselors, and 3 high schools with minimal support in the form of their counselors. This is effectively the exact same level of support we had prior to having the SEL positions at the time when teachers were literally begging for more help with student behaviors. I am not sure if you fully realize the extent to which our students are struggling. And I am not talking about kids who just didn't get to socialize during COVID so that they don't know how to behave. I just had a social worker leave their position because they had been physically injured so many times this year that they couldn't take it anymore. This is our reality, and it requires teams of people, not just one professional, but actual groups of professionals who can provide a team approach to tiered supports. This decision, SELs were supposed to be the key to implementing really strong tier 1 social emotional supports and then possibly some tier 2 supports. Social workers could help focus on tier 2 and tier 3 supports. But remember, with this decision, some schools will have neither of these people. This decision will cause you to lose teachers, not to mention the lives and livelihoods that are being put on the line of those losing their positions. What happens to the people who lose their SEL positions? We have been told that they would be absorbed into other positions. Some of them are social workers, and we don't have extra positions for them. These are people who have been with PV for a long time. And what happens if you only keep some SEL positions? That is effectively calling a RIF. The schools that would get to keep their position, I am sure, would like to keep the person they have. But in a RIF, that's not what happens. Do we shuffle people around? Teachers asked for help. It was given to them. And when you take it away, they will leave. I am asking you to give this a hard look. We care for and teach the whole child, mind, body, and soul. And less people to do that means less care, more stress, lost teachers, and likely more lost students. Because I guarantee that more behaviors with nobody to address it will.
After Melissa Schwartz will be Kia Kuroda, Susan Seep, and Jessica Wani.
Good evening, President Matura, Governing Board, Dr. Bales, and Cabinet. I'm Melissa Schwartz, a parent of both a recent PVHS CREST graduate and a current student. I'm the president of the CREST Parent Group and past president of United Parent Council, among other roles I've served in the district. We all know the overall school budgeting process is very complex. As you've explained, the district is trying to adjust this budget. Sometimes we forget that here in Paradise, that this governing board does reach out and get feedback from stakeholders, including representatives from teachers, staff, principals, district admin, and parents. I want to say thank you to the governing board for reaching back out to the budget task force and stakeholder feedback. It was evident that the work this committee did was acknowledged during today's governing board session. First, I know it's difficult to make these decisions. I know as a district, we do not want to increase overall class sizes nor cut these positions. I would encourage the board to remember the direct impact of any proposed changes. I understand the M&O and I understand your words and my words as I went door to door working on getting the M&O passed. However, when we look at increasing the elementary school class size to find a way to remove 12 teacher positions, we need to recognize that the impact of that is only on between 8 and 12 schools versus removing 12 SEL instructors from our elementary schools, which will have an impact of potentially 29 schools and thousands of students that those SEL instructors reach out and touch on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. So please keep this in mind as you are working on this. And I encourage parents listening that they need to hear that the board is required to use the phrase increasing class size in order to remove teachers. That is very unfortunate because it's how the budget has to be stated, but the impact is much different. Please keep this in mind as you make these cuts. I encourage those wanting to hear today's study session, you can view it at the PV United Parent Council YouTube channel. A final thank you for your service from 1 year to 16 years to our board members, Mr. Laney, President Matura, and Mrs. Bacon. Thank you.
Good evening, President Matura, Governing Board, Dr. Bales, and Cabinet. I want to thank you first for calling the Budget Task Force back to meet again to discuss your questions from the last meeting, your observations, and to give them another chance at continuing the work they had begun. I also want to thank you for adding a parent to the Budget Task Force conversation. As UPC president, I was very happy to step into that role. There was a lot for me to learn, as you can imagine. I believe the Budget Task Force had already met 9, 10 times. So they had already explored so many things. I want to thank Dr. Holmes for meeting with me for a while. I took up a lot of his time. But we talked through a lot of things really thoroughly. And school funding is incredibly complicated. And there were so many questions that I came to him and I was like, well, can't we just do this? And it was things that I had heard suggested from other parents. And he was like, yeah, no, we can't. And here's why. The bond dollars can't be used to pay salaries, right? And there's Title I funding, Title IV funding. And so I just want parents to know that this is a very complicated process. And I believe that everything has been researched. Ms. Berrigan, thank you. I reached out to you with some questions that I had heard repeatedly from parents and that had came in from the UPC survey. And I just wanted an opportunity to clear up some confusion for parents. So Ms. Berrigan provided us some written answers and we put them on our UPC Facebook page this evening, just before this meeting. So they are there and we're gonna push them out to parents as well. This is not an easy decision or an easy process. And so I appreciate all of the thoughtful consideration that is going into it. I know a phrase that I've heard repeated many times throughout the years in PV is when cuts have to happen, we want them as far away from the kids as possible. Sometimes it's not possible, but wherever it is possible, I would encourage those cuts to be away from the students. And I also wanted to thank the Budget Task Force because they put a lot of time and a lot of energy and it was stressful, but they saw the work through as best they could. And I also want to thank our SELs and our instructional coaches. And I second everything Molly said about Miss Denise because Miss Denise is at my elementary school. So I've had the privilege of seeing her in action and you can't quantify what they do because something pops up and they're the people that respond. They're the people that everybody else goes looking for to handle whatever it is that's come up. And I do worry that if they're not available, who's going to be there for those kids? Thank you.
Okay, I thought someone was telling me to fix him something. Good evening, President Matura, Governing Board, Dr. Bales, and Cabinet. First, I'd like to thank the board for sending us back to the table. I believe it recognizes the tradition in this district and the language and policy that we have that insists that when we change the contracts, when we change our working conditions, or when we have a massive change in funding, that the stakeholders are allowed to discuss it. I also appreciate every single member of the Budget Task Force that brought all of their experiences and expertise into the room by hearing from principals, from members of COA, from PVSEA and PVEA. We were able to understand how all of these things would impact different parts of the district. I'd also like to thank Dr. Holmes and Mrs. Berrigan for fairly representing the discussion and all of its complexity in the study session this afternoon. I hope you know that after 10 multi-hour meetings, I think it was over 24 hours of discussion that we have, you can imagine how carefully we researched, how much we got into the weeds, and how carefully we discussed all of the implications of class size ratios, of the implications of all of the different options that you saw, dozens and dozens of options. I'd also like to thank Dr. Bales for his guidance and wisdom in helping us stay calm and stay focused. We believe in this process. We believe in every part of the process, but we also believe that we are better together. And it's very easy to think about things from a bird's eye view. But when you've got your feet in the trenches, it's important to think about how every single kid is going to be impacted. Dr. Bales, you've done a lot of work with Teen Lifeline. I know that trauma is not restricted to those that experience poverty. I know that suicide rates don't depend on social economic circumstances. We need to help every single one of our kids in this district, and I appreciate all of the things that you will consider in helping us to make this very difficult decision. None of us wanted to cut anything, but we believe that we made the right decisions that allow us to work forward and make progress where we have to make cuts today. I shared the history of class sizes with each and every one of you today during the study session. I want you to think about how hard it was in 2012 when we had 27 kindergartners in every class, when we had over 35 fourth graders in every class, and all the work that we've done to get that back is nowhere near what we're doing when we increase class sizes by 1. I believe in us. We are better together.
Our final speaker is Jessica Wani.
Hi, good evening. It's been a while since I've been up here, but thank you, President Matura and governing board members and cabinet, and of course, Superintendent Troy Bales. First, I can't come up here and not thank both Julie and Susan for all of your advocacy and your hard work. And so from the bottom of my heart, and as somebody who knows a little bit of what it is to be a volunteer, thank you. I wasn't planning on talking tonight at all. I was planning on coming and sitting and listening and supporting in every way that I could. I know a lot of you, and I've worked with most of you at some point in time over the however many years that I've been a volunteer here in the district. And I have no doubt that every single one of you is struggling to sleep at night, struggling to make this decision. And I don't envy the position that any of you are in. That said, I am here speaking, and I didn't prepare anything. Also, not like me. I'm not going to quote like statistics or data or numbers. I'm really uncomfortable not doing that. But the reason I'm standing here is because I was actually driving to this governing board meeting with like 7,000 bagels in the back of my car. So my car is going to smell like an everything bagel probably for an eternity because I'm going to be dropping them off at the transportation department meeting tomorrow, where we get to hang out with the bus drivers and share some food. Awesome, wonderful. But as I'm driving, I get a text message, which I did not look at because I was driving. I pulled up, I parked, and it was a text message from my high school student, 14. And it was a screenshot of a news article that spoke about one of our schools. And the headline was something like, Phoenix school student, 6th grader, threatens all other 6th graders, says they're going to kill them. And I'm driving here and the whole time I'm thinking about all the things that you all have to deal with and how there's no easy decision and none of this comes lightly, and just hits me like a ton of bricks, right? When I park and I see this text message from my 14-year-old. Mental health has to be a priority, guys. Like, I know you all know that. And I know I'm not saying anything that you haven't all thought about and aren't taking really seriously, but it is a safety issue. It is an education issue. It is an everything issue. And it's not just our littles, right? It's our middle schoolers. It's our high schoolers. I mean, they're all affected. And I just beg you from the bottom of my heart, as someone that I'm here because I care. I have lots of choice, right? I'll be completely honest. My little one, he's not in PV. PV is a great district. Their school choice, it didn't work for him. I want him to come back desperately. But there has to be these supports in place. And it's not just, I say this, and I'm not comfortable saying it. It's not just the kids that you think have it. Like, all kids have issues, right? My 10-year-old, man, he has issues and he can disrupt a class like anybody. So just thank you for everything that you're
Thank you to all our speakers being here this evening. I'd like to open this up for discussion among the board for questions, comments, anything you would like to share from today's discussions. Does anyone want to start? Mrs. Bacon.
I can start, and this is one of the things that the Budget Task Force looked at. And we have a list of over 70 items that could be eliminated from the M&O budget. 85% of which are people, because 85% of our budget is people. So it's difficult to make a cut to this without affecting somehow people. But I wanted to just read a couple of the things that were not considered. Employee pays for their health insurance costs. The savings for that would be $34 million. No one's interested in that. That's not even on the radar. Everything else is reducing employee work schedule, reducing parapro hours, reducing other employees, including the ones that have been talked about previously, but also increasing class size. So increasing class size by 1, by 2, by 3, by 4, by 5. It's a lot of money that makes up. We did go to voters and we did tell them that we wouldn't change class size. And that's something that this board takes really seriously. So I just want you to have an idea of what this looks like. Even eliminating district office staff, well, it seems like it's a lot of money. It's not. So when we talked about the increase, if we gave employees that are our central office administrators and cabinet an additional day, additional furlough day, how much would that save us? $20,000. We all think of them as really high paid individuals, and they are certainly more well paid than the average teacher. But it just isn't a huge savings. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there so that you can understand that of the 73, there's almost nothing that doesn't touch people, which is horrible. It's horrendous. And Mr. Hill is right. We should take responsibility for this. And I know I feel a tremendous responsibility that we're in this situation. And all I can do from this point forward is work to correct it and do it in a way that hopefully, because I'm not going to say it's not going to have an impact on the classroom. It is. It absolutely is going to do that. But hopefully do it in a way that's as minimally impactful as it can be.
Mrs. Case?
There's still some information floating through letters that we received that people don't quite understand how this happened. So I just kind of want to go over that. And I've been trying to think of a illustration to make it simplified. So let's just say in your budget, you put in $500 and you thought it was an ongoing money, and it wasn't. It was a one-time thing. So that's what happened here. It was not, no one stole any money from the district. It was a mistake. Had we not had this mistake, we would have made cuts a year and a half ago. So it's not as if the cuts would have had to happen already. This is ESSER funds that were put in a wrong category by previous financial people, not the current ones we have now. And as soon as we found out, the second or third week of May, the governing board was told, and it went immediately to, it was explained last June in the first governing board meeting in June. We have not hidden this fact. As soon as we found out, we were told and the public was told immediately. So the task force was formed, and it was an embarrassment for me to have to say, oh, we made a big mistake here. But it happened. And so now we're dealing with the consequences of it. And this is really painful because we have worked for years to reduce class sizes. This has been a big deal as part of my time on the board, to reduce class sizes, because we all know that the more time kids have with their teacher, if you divide it up by 25 or 30 or 35, it changes how much time you can spend individually with the children. There's many supports that have been added to the schools. COVID has taken an impact. It goes on and on. If you know me very well, you know that my passion is reading. That is my passion. Teaching kids to read. That's my passion. Phonics, reading, all of that is my passion. And, you know, the bigger the class size, the less individual attention children get in reading, especially in those early grades. But now those early grades have turned into 3rd and 4th graders because they didn't get what they needed during the shutdowns of COVID. And that early grade learning to read has changed things. And so they need more support. None of this is simple. None of this is easy. These are really hard choices. I will say, I know UPC sent out a survey, and I appreciate the time and energy to go through all those comments. Thank you very much, Shakia. That was amazing what you did. But from my personal opinion, we haven't heard from a lot more parents in the district. They don't know what's going on. They don't know that we're kind of choosing, do we take away SELs? Do we take away, where are we going to make these cuts? And they don't understand what can be cut. You can't stop building buildings or fixing a building doesn't come out of the money of M&O. And the general public does not understand finances in schools. It is so complicated. So I've heard from parents through letters and phone calls, and they've said, please don't increase the class sizes. Please don't do that. And I've heard from letters that has said, don't take away the SELs. And this is not easy in any shape or form. And I have been through budget cuts before. It's like going to the dentist and having teeth pulled out. It's horrid. It's just horrid. Budget cuts are horrid. There's no better explanation. I appreciate the work of Dr. Holmes and Mrs. I want to say Jill Berrigan she's so friendly, but for their work and steadiness and trying to gather. This is not easy. And I don't want anybody to think that we haven't listened to you, whatever our choices are. This is very difficult. So for anybody who hasn't understood where it came from, I just wanted to explain that again. Did I do okay on that? If you want to correct anything I said, go right ahead.
You did just fine.
Okay.
Very well.
Okay. I mean, I've heard this a few times. I should be able to get it now. Okay. Thank you for now.
Mr. Laney, did you want to make ask any questions or make any comments?
Sure, thanks. So I appreciate all of the emails, the phone calls, the people who speak at board members. I know it takes time out of your schedule to speak on these things, so I totally appreciate that. I want to read a brief statement that I wrote, and then I had a series of questions that I was going to ask that some of them have already been answered, and these were to clarify things. So here goes. So at the last board meeting, it was clear that emotions were running high in the room, and I feel for our PV employees who were so upset that at times they scoffed, laughed, and jeered at us in the meeting. I know they wouldn't allow that in their own classrooms, but when fighting for what they believe is right, maybe their emotions got the better of them. I know mine do sometimes. It also became clear that there are rumors and misinformation being circulated. I worry that not everyone is receiving accurate information. So while this may seem redundant to many, I feel it's important to clarify, and I'm grateful that our cabinet has already done a lot of that. So here are a few things that I'm going to ask to hopefully clarify a few things. Whomever on the cabinet wants to answer, please feel free. The first one, though, is directed to Dr. Bells. Budget balance carry forward. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yes, Mr. Laney, be happy to. President Matura and governing board members, the budget balance carry forward is that amount that we use at the end of the year to help us in planning for emergency cash use. And I kind of look to Mrs. Berrigan to help me fill in the right words, because I tell you, I'm starting to run out of a little gas after a long day today. So Jill, can you help me?
Yeah, I think we talked a little bit about budget balance carry forward earlier in the percent, so I won't necessarily go over those again, but I'll try and provide an analogy that might help everybody understand. In our own personal lives, we carry savings to ensure that we have something to rely on if we come into a situation, and financial advisors recommend 6 months personally. We don't have anywhere near 6 months, but we do have the opportunity to take care of some things if we need to with the 7% for M&O and about 11% with our other operational funds. And it's important to have those things because funding in the state of Arizona is not always consistent. It's not always reliable. We rely on our legislature, who doesn't always provide us with those funding numbers until after we've even had to adopt our budget for the year. So it's with that kind of uncertainty, it's important to have those types of reserves, or what we refer to as budget balance carry forward. Does that answer your question, Mr. Laney?
Yeah, exactly. I was just looking for that answer, that it's a savings account. It's being fiscally responsible so that if things or mistakes are made, you can address them. And because of that, we were able to almost immediately start addressing this issue. Am I correct on that?
That's correct.
Okay, so let's see. The ESG, when was that given? That was 2020,
So the
correct?
enrollment stabilization grant was provided by the governor's office. It was his version of ESSER dollars from the federal level. That was provided in the December of 20 for the 2021 school year. So we got it halfway through that school year for that year in order to support the staffing commitments, the contracts for certified support staff administrators that we entered the 2021 school year in. And that, of course, was the year that we had COVID, and there was a lot of kids that stayed home, went home, did not return. And so it was meant to support the schools. So we paid exactly what the purpose was. We paid to support the salaries and benefits of people who were under contract for that year.
Okay, and it was already addressed that the cuts would have been made last school year, so I appreciate that.
Actually, 2 years ago.
2 years ago, okay.
Mhm.
That's right, 2021. Okay, then the next question is, who found the problem? What group found it?
So this was the finance office and their checks and
Okay.
balances as they monitor the budget throughout the year.
Okay, and then the next question, what public meeting was it addressed? You said June, right? It was the,
Yeah, so the confirmation was made in mid-May of 22, and we informed the board, and we first described it at the June 2nd meeting. We have since addressed it at the June 20th meeting, as well as the August 18th meeting, and then again in November 17th.
yeah, and if people want the timestamps, the June 2nd meeting was 1 hour, 1 minute and 40 seconds into that one. And the June 20th was 23 minutes and 38 seconds. I went back to find them because I was trying to remember when we talked about them too. So hopefully that's helpful. And then was a plan put into place to fix it over time?
Yes,
It was, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, we developed a plan immediately at the beginning of June with what we thought was just the budget shortfall, and developing a process that engaged with our employees first, since they're kind of the end users of all these consequences. And that process evolved because of the additional revenues that came at the end of June when the legislature passed and the governor signed a budget on June 30th, which provided an additional revenue source that matched, basically literally matched the amount that we were short. And so we encouraged that group to continue to work so that we could work on providing additional compensation to employees this year. The easy way out would have been to take all of the additional revenue and pay for the existing expenditures and do nothing and not provide any additional raises. That
Yeah,
would
I
have been the easy way
remember.
out.
Yeah, I remember the process being clearly articulated then, and I remember us discussing that as a board. Was there at any time any supposed backroom agreements to delay any of this until after the election?
Absolutely not. I think as evidenced by addressing it at the public meetings in June, twice in June and August, demonstrates our willingness to be open about it.
Yeah, I completely agree with that because I was there along the way. So again, a lot of these questions are redundant as I already know the answers to them. I am just getting the information out so the public fully knows this because rumors can be hurtful to a district. And so we need to, I've always taken the approach since I've been on the board that communication and through communication, we can solve things regardless of our differences. And so in line with that, there wasn't any delay on execution of the plan to start addressing it, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And that's all I have to ask right now. I might do some in a little bit. So anybody who wants to go next, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Laney. Mrs. Greenberg.
Yes, along with everyone else, I want to thank the Budget Task Force for coming back and for gathering all the feedback. I want to thank Dr. Holmes and Ms. Bergen, Dr. Bales, all of Cabinet. You know, we talked a great deal about this last time. I think Mr. Laney put it well, that emotions were high, and they were high up here as well. It is a situation that we hate being in, but we are in it, and I would like to think that we do work through it by communicating, we work through it by getting the feedback. Ultimately, we will work through it by making a decision up here, and I presume that will come next week. I do think, you know, one of the things I heard loud and clear last discussion was, is there a potential hybrid model? Did it have to be an all or nothing situation in terms of what was presented? And although I wouldn't necessarily call this hybrid in that sense, I feel confident that the Budget Task Force, you know, heard that, and that's what has been presented back. And when I say hybrid, I guess maybe, you know, really what I meant was more, is there something that could be a little more individualized, either to a school or as we're seeing here, perhaps, you know, elementary versus secondary type of thing. And the feeling, you know, based on what's being presented is that, yes, these are obviously going to touch classrooms. They're obviously there's going to be, you know, some positions gone, but by not increasing the average gen inside over the entire district, or not reducing the SEL positions across the entire district, we are going to support our students best in the way we can while making this tough decision. Every position is important, and we know that. Every position is critical. We know that, and there's more I could say, but I think everybody's been saying a lot. And at this point, I do want to thank everybody, all of the input we've gotten, all of the comments we've seen, all of, you know, folks who are looking at it basically from their student's classroom, folks who are looking at it from their student's school, folks who are looking at it district level. All of your feedback is important, and all of your feedback is valid. And we're going to listen to all of it. And ultimately, we will make a decision. I personally feel confident we can do that. I've got next week's meeting on my calendar, and I think we will come to a decision. I don't have a lot of questions. I mean, there were a lot of potential, as Mrs. Bacon read some earlier, there were a lot of potential solutions that were not acceptable, that would definitely hit classrooms in such a way that would be untenable. I think what we're trying to find is, what can we do? What direction can we give in our vote? At this point, I appreciate what's being brought. I, again, wish we didn't have to do it, but I think probably what's being brought is something I can support more than what we've seen in the past.
Thank you. It's been a very long day, long weeks, long months thinking about this constantly. This is definitely something no one wanted to be dealing with. And as it's been pointed out that, we're dealing with it now, but it's something that would have been dealt with last year or the year before that, that this was always going to happen at some point. So we are dealing with it now, and we are tasked to take care of this, and that's what we're going to do. But there are no easy answers. And we've heard from members of the task force and how difficult this has been, and hours and upon hours, meetings upon meetings of just going around and discussing all of the different line items that could come together to bring a solution to the budget. And it's tough. It is really hard. I know the increase in class size, like that's been a really tough one for me, watching it over the years and inching away at it. And so that was a really hard one for me to be looking at. And on the other side, I know that our SEL positions are so important in our schools for our kids. They are benefiting from having another adult in the school. The teachers are benefiting from having this support system in the classroom that allows them to focus on the rest of the class, while a student who is needing some additional attention right then can receive that attention. And so having that in our schools has been a great benefit to the students who want to be listening to the math lesson and now have a teacher to spend time on the lesson, and allowing an SEL coach to be in dealing with the students who need some extra support instead of sitting and disrupting a classroom. So this is all in our classrooms. Things that we saw and is not on this recommendation today was the instructional coaches. And I know from emails, and there's a lot of people who don't see that instructional coach. It's not when you're going into your child's classroom, you're seeing the teacher, you see the people in the classroom with your student, and you might not know that the instructional coach left right before your student got there after meeting with your student's teacher to discuss the data that they've been receiving. We were talking a lot about the data today, and some of the test scores and things like that, and how important it is for the instructional coaches to then be meeting with the classroom teachers to give them advice on how to move forward if they are noticing that a large portion of the class didn't understand a certain concept in math. And so these people are going in and working with the teachers to allow them to address it in a different way that now allows that classroom to understand the math concepts and move forward. And so these are directly impacting our students. And while you might not see that instructional coach in your child's classroom because they're meeting with the teachers at different times, and your student probably hasn't seen the instructional coach and doesn't understand that the reason that they got extra time or lesson in a different way that now they understand and can move forward, that's the instructional coach's help in the classroom. And so I did want to just bring that out because I think these are some of those, people don't think that that might touch the classroom, and yet it is a very direct benefit to our students. I asked this, this afternoon, and Mr. Holmes, I'm going to see if you can maybe repeat some of the information you clarified for me. That what we're looking at here is increasing the gen ed class size by 1 at elementary level, and that this would potentially affect, and this is all looking at a snapshot for today. This is constantly changing. There is no magic formula to decide exactly, but at this point in time, it looks like it would be 12 classrooms that would be across the entire district who would be impacted by the class size increase of 1 at the elementary level. Is that correct?
12 grade levels.
Okay, 12 grade levels.
12 grade levels.
Okay, out of how many grade levels do we have if you look at it across the district?
I believe I believe it was 205.
Okay, so out of 205 grade levels. And can you now please explain again, as you did so nicely today, the difference of increasing the class size at an elementary school versus increasing it at a secondary school?
Sure. We staff differently at elementaries versus secondary school. So when we talk about 12 grade levels being impacted across the district, it means the other 193 would not be impacted at all by that change. Different at the high schools and middle schools, because we allocate differently, every school would be impacted, and likely all of the sections at some level would feel that at some level. So it's go ahead, Dr. Bales.
So when we increase the gen ed staffing ratio at 712 schools by 1, we're talking about anywhere between what and what FTE per site?
At the high schools, it's going to be 2.1 to 2.9. The middle schools, it's going to be less. I don't have those off the top of my head, but I think we're like in the 0.6 to 1.2 range.
So at the high school, just as an example, as a comprehensive high school, not the block section at PV, but it could be as anywhere from 10 to 15 sections that they would reduce out of their master schedule. That is correct?
Yes, that's correct. And that's going to be felt throughout the master schedule.
So that increases class sizes for other teachers at that high school.
Correct.
Okay, so that was something that I found really an interesting way to think about it, about why it was, the recommendation came in as the elementary school, the elementary classes increase, but not at the secondary level. And that the idea of 12 grade levels or 12 grades at the different schools. Grade levels at the different schools, as opposed to the 190.
193 will have no impact.
Okay. So that was big insight for me to be hearing about that. Although again, none of this is anything that anyone wants to do. No one wants to touch any of this. So thank you for your clarification. Mrs. Bacon?
I just wanted to clarify the budget balance carry forward that we have. Mrs. Berrigan said we have $14 million, and today we discussed the components of that. 10 million of that is unfilled positions for this school year. So we don't have, if we had those positions filled, we'd only have $4 million in that budget balance carry forward.
Yeah, or presumably the direction from the board would still be to have 7%. We'd have to just take that off the top of the budget and ensure that we held that aside still to ensure 7%.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Case?
Thank you. I was trying to come up with ways that we could perhaps have SELs at the, in this afternoon's meeting at some of the title schools and maybe not have them otherwise. And explain again, Dr. Holmes, why that can't be, because in some of my other readings, it said a school could be allocated 0.5, and I think this was in the past, 0.5, and they could choose it to use it as this or this or this. So that's possible, but you can't just, help me understand all of that.
Sure, we really need to allocate staffing uniformly across the district. When we don't do that, one of the places where we can get into trouble is with comparability. Title I federal funds.
Wait, what is comparability?
Comparability means that when we look at the ratios of federal and state funding, they need to be roughly similar at each site. So, and specifically, like at the elementary, for example, across our elementary schools, when you look at those ratios of what's allocated, it's got to be similar. So we can't just pick a school and give them, you know, four additional teaching positions, because that school will not be comparable to the rest of them in terms of what we've allocated. So there has to be some uniformity in that, in the way that we allocate.
But can a 0.5 be chosen at that school to be used as they want it to, or something?
Sure.
How did that come to be?
Yeah, well, there was a point, maybe 3 years ago, where we allocated a 0.5 that could be an SEL counselor, SEL social worker, or SEL specialist. And schools were given the option of what they wanted that 0.5 to be. From a comparability standpoint, it doesn't matter what the position is, it's the amount. So if we're uniformly allocating across the district and provide some flexibility in what that is, we can do that. Where we get into a challenge is when we just allocate different amounts on different ratios at different schools. So in other words, you know, pick elementary school A, you know, they get a 0.5 for some support, and in elementary school B, that's, you know, similar, they get 1.5. That's the kind of thing that we can't really do.
And to get title funds, which add to that school, it has to start at an equal level before the title funding happens. Is that correct?
We staff uniformly across the district. So our staffing ratios at kindergarten are 25-1. Whether it's a title school or a non-title school, we staff at 25-1. And then we have ratios for each of the grade levels.
But then title money can help certain ways otherwise,
In
but it has to
addition to
start
that
equal.
allocation.
It
In
has to start at an equal base.
Yes,
And then go from there for the title money to help.
yes.
Thank you for that explanation.
Ms. Berg, is there anything you would add to that explanation? It's a very complicated conversation, and I think we made people more confused than in anything. But there is a federal component to this measure. I know that you and Dr. Holmes spend a lot of time working with our title coordinator at a certain time of the year to measure that impact of the maintenance of effort from our M&O funds versus the federal funds. So do you want to add to that?
Yep, I can add a little bit to that, hopefully provide some clarity too. The federal government, when they provide title funds, their expectation is that we're supplementing what we already do with our state funds, so that there should be some true, they believe the word is equality. Hello. So if it's the same number of students and they generally look at that by a per pupil amount, they would expect that with our state funds, our general funds, we are staffing schools very similarly, and that the title funds or federal funds are used to supplement that for those schools that have high free and reduced populations and need to have additional supports.
So that's an explanation that supports what Dr. Holmes was telling us
Correct.
about his effort to staff equally with our general ed allocation.
Mr. Laney, did you have further questions or comments?
Yeah, I do, actually, thanks. So in our study session today, I mentioned a survey that was sent out to the staff, and I went and crunched the numbers between that meeting and now. And the numbers come out, about 2,011 people filled out the survey, and these are all employees. And of those, 66% of them wanted lower class size. The way the question was phrased was that class sizes should be raised to create more capacity for employee raises. And 66% of people disagreed with that, or strongly disagreed, meaning that if we were to cut class sizes for employee raises, they didn't want that, which we've already given raises. So now if we're putting, raising class sizes, I've been saying cut class sizes. So now if we were to raise class sizes, we're going against what 66% of employees wanted on a survey. One of the other things I wanted to mention is, there aren't many things that we can keep in this world. We can't keep our home, our car, or even our kids as they move away and make families themselves. Shoot, I couldn't even keep my hair, and I tried. But the only thing I can keep is my word. And I gave my word that I wouldn't raise class sizes. And so those are my thoughts on this.
Thank you.
And this is from a standpoint that I am a kid that would have fully benefited from an SEL. I've making no, I haven't hidden my history at all as to the way I was treated as a kid in schools. And so I can fully appreciate the position, and I understand the dilemma that we're facing and the pain that we have to deal with to make these decisions. Ultimately, I really appreciate the budget task force. I appreciate the work that you all put in. I know you did a lot of work on this. It's my understanding that the budget task force was set up to look at options, that in all of the discussions, throughout the whole process, it was under no impression that this was going to be part of bargaining or anything like that, that the final decision would always come down to the board. And regardless of what suggestions are made or input and so on, that we still had to make the decision and do that to the best of our ability. So I really do appreciate the work that you did. And I fully understand that, and I'm grateful for it. And that's what I have to say for tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Bales? Dr.
President-
Bales?
President Matura, governing board members, I did want to just respond to one question that was asked earlier by a speaker. In terms of the strategic hiring review, the things that we did this year, will some of that carry over into next year? And the answer is yes, most likely. We evaluate every position every year that remains vacant on whether it should be reposted for the following year. It's always been a part of our practice, especially as it relates to administrative vacancies. On that strategic hiring review, there are some direct administrative positions. And so while we haven't made those final commitments, I did state, and I will honor my commitment to reduce administrative costs in a similar fashion as the other groups are impacted. So that will happen. It's just some of those things haven't been discussed because they didn't come through the budget task force in terms of options for the following year. But they are there, they are available, and they are options to us. And they will be considered in addition to many other options. Like I said, we're chipping away at this. We still have a lot of work to do as we move forward.
Right, because that reminds us that we're tackling one portion of this right now, but there'll be more to come at the end of the year and when new budgets are set for the next year that will all be impacted further. But this is our task right now is to look at this specific portion. So thank you. Mrs. Case?
Can we have that next slide up so we can show that there's still a deficit, even with the cuts? Yeah. Yeah, that one. I just, this is ongoing, that this problem's not solved. And that's horrible to bring up, but it's not over, so.
Mrs. Case?
Dr. Bells, is there anything else that you think we've missed the pieces of that we need to bring up?
I think that the board members have done a good job of trying to summarize, some of the concerns that you expressed earlier today. I think I'm still challenged with what recommendation I bring to you for final approval next week. That would be my goal to do so. I think when we left this afternoon, we were talking about still a recommendation that is consistent with what the budget task force summary provided in its revised recommendation tonight. So it's, if there's any other additional comments that the board wants to make that would give me additional insight on that recommendation, I would appreciate that. But that's what I'm hearing at this time. And maybe there's an opportunity in there for my cabinet and I to talk about what some of those the dollar amount commitments might be, even if it's not a position, say, for commensurate, administrative costs or such. Maybe that's a place that we can add that. We just haven't, had a lot of time to discuss that. So kind of putting something, maybe a little bit of the cart before the horse. But, like I said, I'm continuously committed to making sure that that those administrative cuts are reflective and commensurate with other percentages to those other groups as well.
Thank you, Dr. Bales. Thank you, everyone. Do we have any further comments or clarifications or anything for moving forward?
No, not for me.
Okay. All right. Before we adjourn, I would like to remind you that the next regular board meeting will be held on Thursday, January 12th, 2023 at 7 p.m. But that we are looking at a special meeting Thursday, December 8th at 7 p.m., 1 week from today. So it will be a single item agenda specifically dealing with the budget. All right. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously.